one of the most important elements of a successful wedding is the wedding rehearsal. And so we're going to talk about how to conduct a wedding rehearsal. And so what's the first thing you think our audience should know about that right off the bat?
Yeah, I think it's very important to know that both you and the couple need to be prepared for the rehearsal itself. And a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about the rehearsal dinner, and that's a big part of the event for people, and they don't really think about the rehearsal. But I think it's very important that everyone comes to the rehearsal prepared. So that includes you, first and foremost, as the officiant, that you've got to make sure you've got all those final notes and all the details worked out, and you really understand how it's going, because again, couples are very nervous and they want to feel a deep sense of confidence to know that you really know how this is going to go. So if you come and you look unprepared, that makes them feel nervous. And so I think it's very important for you to come prepared, and then also for the couple to really come prepared, which means communicating to all the right people to make sure that they are there and that they're there on time.
Right. That's huge.
Well, I disagree with that so much. Our role as leaders is to come in and kind of set the tone, and we don't want to do that in like a super stiff, strong-handed, dictatorial way, because people are there to celebrate, and it's a grand occasion. But obviously, we all know that people will fill in a vacuum if there's not leadership there. And so all of a sudden, Aunt Susie or Grandma Sarah or someone steps in and starts to take control of the whole situation. And that's not what you want. You want to be in charge, but doing so winsomely and kindly, but with authority. And then it establishes your authority as a pastor as well.
Right. And we have another video where we talk about planning the ceremony. And so it's really important you've got a great plan going into the rehearsal so you really know what you're going to do, what's going to happen tonight, and you can help everybody to get there. Right.
I would also just add to that real quickly that part of you being prepared, I think, is to show up to the venue wherever it's going to be a little bit early, especially if it's not at your church. Your church, you kind of know how it goes, but you're at a different venue, so you can meet the venue staff there and get a feel for the room, so you're not figuring out where people are going to go as they arrive. You should know ahead of time.
Right. That's really good. The physical arrangement dictates a lot about what the wedding's going to be, how long the processional will take, and all things like that as well. Yeah. So how do you start? And you've got all these people, and they're probably, some of them are late, they're all jibber-jabbering, they're excited, they haven't maybe seen each other in a while, and you've got to get the ball rolling. So how do you actually start that rehearsal?
So I think it's really important to have a little bit of a pep talk, if you will, and you gather everyone together, and then I think you set the climate and the mood of not just the rehearsal, but of the wedding at that point. And so I think you share with folks, I'm so glad you're here. This is a wonderful occasion. It's one of the best things ever. It's one of God's greatest gifts, man and wife being together. But then you also cast maybe a little bit of a climate of celebration and also a reverence that this is a high and holy and wonderful thing. I think you can also start to try to kind of nip in the bud some problems that might come up. And so in a very nice and gracious way, you can let folks know that a lot of planning's gone into it. You've sorted things out. You've got a good game plan for the night. And so you've got it all really pretty much figured out at that point. And I think you could say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I just think that I always like to encourage people, because people, when it comes to weddings, have a lot of opinions. And so I always just share something like, the couple has spent a lot of time planning for this, and if they wanted your opinion, they would have asked it by now. So if they haven't, you should probably keep your opinions to yourself. And then I also like to share, as part of that pep talk, just an encouragement that I've just seen this so many times over the years, that stuff always goes wrong on the wedding day. There's always going to be an issue. And so I think it's good to let people know, hey, unless the building's on fire and it's an emergency, just let the bride and groom live in ignorant bliss. They don't need to know that your dress doesn't fit right or that this person didn't show up on time. Just don't bug them with all those problems. Let them enjoy the day. So I like to say that at the rehearsal.
You're going to buffer them a little bit. Set the right expectations for what the day is going to be like. That's really good. And so at some point, the rehearsal itself, we're going to rehearse the wedding so that people know where to go, when to go, and so forth. So how do you help people make sure they know what their role is? Walk us through that.
Yeah. So I'm sure everybody does this a little bit differently, but just a system that a guy trained me on 20 years ago that I found to be helpful, and what I always do is I think of it this way. I start in the middle of the ceremony and then go to the end and then come back from the beginning to the middle again. So that means the first thing I do is not start with lining up in the back with the processional, but I get everyone on the stage or the platform and I put everybody in their spot. And again, we've agreed on this and planned it out, and we have some resource to help you figure out what the stage should look like if you're not sure with that. But the first thing is get everyone to stand in their spot for where they're going to be during the ceremony. And I say, now look down and remember this spot. This is your home. Don't forget it. Right. And so that's how you start off. And then from that point, then you can kind of walk through the details of the ceremony. Here's what the vows are going to be, and then they're going to recite this and this song. And so we kind of walk through it quickly. You don't have to go through every detail, but just kind of walk through what that's going to look like. And then practice the recessional. And then you go through the recessional in the back. What I say is, as you recess out, stay in the order that you leave the room, and then just stay in the back there. And now you're already lined up for the processional. And so then they do that, and then the last thing we do is actually have them come in and practice the processional. And then I'll usually do that a total of 2 times. They practice the processional, the ceremony, and the recessional all twice.
Right. I do something similar. I have them the first time we just walk through it. The second time, if the DJ is there, the music people, then we try to do it with the music so that they can time. I want the person who's pushing the CD button or whatever to be able to time and to be able to get a feel themselves of when do I need to fade it out because the bride's coming next, some things like that. Don, how do you guys do it?
Well, it's kind of interesting that between the 3 of us, we've done a lot of weddings between the 3 of us, and we've all come to kind of the same conclusion of the format. Everybody's in place, then you practice the recess, then you practice the process. And so I found that if you don't do it that way, it truly is like herding cats. Yeah. And it just kind of really goes downhill. So we got to be really organized with that part of it.
Yeah. And I like starting in the middle because sometimes I go to a venue and you can't really tell how it's going to accommodate the wedding party until you get everybody actually up there and people are standing there and you realize that, oh, those people are standing in front of something that needs to be, so you can't even really decide until you've got people in that setting. Yeah. So it's a great way to do it. So you go through a couple times, people are starting to get it, it doesn't take much. Then how do you close?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity then once again to remind everybody just how excited you are for the ceremony, how wonderful it is to be together, family and friends. And then I usually open the rehearsal in prayer, and I close the rehearsal in prayer as well. It's a wonderful opportunity, no matter where anybody's coming from spiritually, to just draw the focus toward God. So any kind of wedding that I'm doing, whether it's Christian or whether it's not particularly Christian, I try to draw people closer to Christ wherever they're coming from. And again, I think it's just a wonderful opportunity to remind folks of this precious, wonderful event that everybody is partaking in. I'll also say, with that rehearsal, the timing of it needs to move along well, because if it starts to lag, people get frustrated and bored.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great, because I emphasize to people, hey, if you cooperate and you stay dialed in, then you'll be done sooner. Right? Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'll just add 3 quick, very specific details that I always share that I think are very specific and very important. One is I always give a speech to them about locking your knees, because I've had many people faint over the years, and it's almost always because people lock up their knees. So always keep one knee bent. 2, I get the groomsmen to agree on how they're going to stand. They're either doing a soccer kick, hands in front, or they're at ease. And when it's kind of half and half, it looks goofy. Yeah, so make sure everyone's on the same page with that.
And along with the angle of their shoulders toward the bridegroom, things like that.
Yes. And then I'll finish one last thing, which is basically what you were saying about the bride. A handy tip I found is if you're not sure where to look during the ceremony, always just angle toward the bride. You'll never go wrong if your shoulders are facing the bride. That almost always works.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. That's great. Okay, so hopefully that's going to help you to have a great wedding rehearsal. Obviously, we couldn't cover every detail, every eventuality, but this is going to help you have a really great rehearsal that will help you have a really great wedding.